So LeBron James had 12 points last night. Early in the game in a 17-footer. Bronny, the crowd erupted. Bronny James, everybody went freaking out. Bronny James arrived. Influencers love him. Everybody's taking pictures of him. So for the record, he has struggled offensively, Bronny James has, in the Summer League. But the number 2 pick in the draft on Tuesday went 0 for 15 from the floor. Alex Sarr, the number 2 pick, high ceiling, 0 for 15, with several air balls. So Bronny, in a terrible draft, I defended as the 55th pick. So just to keep score a little bit, let's go to the second round of the draft, and let's take the player that was drafted right before Bronny. How's he doing? And right after. So the 54th pick, Anton Watson, is with the Celtics. He's had a good summer league. 10 points, 5 rebounds. Celtics, who draft well, really like him. Great front office, really like him, doing well. But he will be a G Leaguer. The player drafted right after him was hurt, so let's go to the 57th pick. It's Ulrich Chomchi, 4 points a game. He is viewed very raw as a G Leaguer. So Bronny James, hot, cold, offensively, mostly cold, nice little defensive player, is, averaging about 4 or 5 points a game and selling a bunch of merch. Is it the end of the world? I mean, I know in politics, clickbait, bad actors make a lot of money, but is this really worth getting worked up over? The player before him, G Leaguer. The player after him, hurt. Player after that, G Leaguer. The number 2 pick, 0 for 15. Much higher ceiling, but 0 for 15. The bigger issue for him is he's a 6'1.5" player and is clearly not a pure point guard. Totally limiting his career. He is, at best, to me, a middle to back end of the rotation defensive player. That's it. Smart kid, athletic, can defend. Never going to be a fluid, natural offensive player. Almost mechanical to me. That's what he is. I'm sure his shot will get better, but his bigger issue is he's 6'1.5", and the Lakers don't trust him to bring the ball up the floor. Now, maybe they will eventually, but at some point, you got to be a point guard at 6'1.5". You can be a defensive point guard, but you got to be a point guard. But the 54th pick, the 55th pick, the 56th pick, the 57th pick, in this draft, they're all G Leaguers. And I mean, could stay in the G League. It's as if the critics are insisting the Lakers took him as a lottery pick and are demanding and forcing him to start at point guard. No, that's not what J.J. Redick is doing. In fact, here's J.J. Redick on Bronny.
He's a development player. That's how we're looking at Bronny. He's certainly going to spend time with the Lakers. He will spend time as well in the G League. We're going to develop his shot. We'll develop his ball skills. He's already got a great feel. He has a really good instinctive nature on the defensive end.
Yes, he does. When you watch him play, he's got hops. He's got some length. He's quick. He's athletic. Got a little bit of a football build almost. He'll be a defensive player. Probably middle to back end of the rotation. You have to remember, though, even Ray Allen came into this league. He wasn't a great shooter. He developed into it. I've always defended players who don't shoot early in their career. Very few players come into this league as brilliant shooters. Hell, LeBron James didn't have a lot of range when he came into this league. Michael Jordan was never a great distant shooter. So I'm going to give Bronny a pass on the three-point shooting. He's going to develop into a better shooter. But he's athletic. He's smart. He's a hard worker. He can defend. I think he's fine. But in this draft, he's been basically what we were told he would be. Limited offensively, good defensive player, and a project. The biggest issue with him is the one that Chris Broussard mentioned yesterday.
Project is the perfect word. You don't typically think of 6'1" guys as projects, but that's what Bronny is. What is really telling, Colin, is the fact that they almost never have him bringing the ball up. Like, he's a 6'1" player. He's going to have to guard point guards. He's got, obviously not the basketball IQ of his dad, but a solid, smart basketball IQ. And yet they're not even attempting to have him learn point guard at this point.
Yes, and that's really the issue, because that's his only way to work in this league. He's too small to be a 5, a 4, a 3, or a 2. But if he can defend the point on a basketball team that's got scores at the 2, 3, 4, and 5, then you got a shot to be a back end of the bench project G Leaguer, maybe at some point a rotational NBA player. J-Mac with the news.
No. Heard on the news.
Hot on the Olympic team. That's going to be in Paris. It's going to be in Paris about a week or two. Right. We're going to have the Olympics. And so he got these games yesterday against Serbia. And Embiid had the worst plus-minus of any player for Team USA. And Embiid, France wanted him on their team. Everybody fought hard for him, right? And he goes, Anthony Davis, by the way, has been very subtle about even being included. His quote was about the Olympics, I'd be happy to play if I'm asked. And he has been an absolutely dominant figure when he's been on the floor. But I've said this for years. Because the NBA is very much into aesthetics and style, I get lectured for years about players. Carmelo Anthony is unbelievable. He was a terrible defender, never in elite shape, a complete isolation player, very few assists, never made a teammate better, didn't do squat in the playoffs. I was told Derrick Rose was going to dominate the league. A highly efficient shooter, more turnovers than I'd like, and hurt all the time. I'm sorry, he's not going to physically dominate the league. I was told Westbrook's an MVP. I thought he was a stat patter. Bad hands, can't shoot for a guard, hyper athletic, but played one speed and often out of control. My eyes did not tell me that Westbrook was an MVP and Carmelo was an absolutely dominant player or Derrick Rose was going to run the league. And my eyes are telling me the same for years with Joel Embiid. I'm not denying he's got a Shaq feel to him. But Shaq won in the playoffs. Shaq was dominant when it mattered. I'm watching this Olympic stuff. Embiid gets in the way of the offense. Anthony Davis doesn't. Hell, Anthony Davis took 2 shots yesterday and was the second most dominating player in the game to Steph Curry. He is literally jumps off the television set. And here's the thing I like about AD, and we've seen this for years in Los Angeles. He can be a star and dominate a game, but he's also an incredibly complementary player. He elevates LeBron. LeBron doesn't have to worry about defending the rim. He can be a player on this Olympic team, or he can dominate moments. With Embiid, there is no complementary to his game. He forces you to play his style. And so does Steph Curry, but I get 4 titles. And so did LeBron, but I got 8 straight finals. With Embiid, he forces you to play his game, but I don't get the payoff at the end of the season. He gets in the way of the Olympic offense, and I find sometimes watching Philadelphia, yes, he's productive. So was Zach LaVine, and the Bulls can't give him away. So was Carmelo Anthony and Westbrook. They didn't win in the playoffs. If you're talking about the greatest bigs of all time, Russell, titles, Kareem, titles, Shaq, titles, Akeem, titles, Embiid can't win a second-round playoff series in the weaker conference. So, again, I'm willing to sacrifice things. LeBron does this a little. You got to kind of build your team around LeBron. But in his prime, so what? I'm going to the finals. Steph Curry, you're going to build some stuff, and you're going to have to sacrifice a little defense with Steph Curry. All right, I'm getting to like 5, 6 finals. I got 4 rings. I don't get the payoff for Embiid. Once again, you're lecturing me on how great he is. Well, greatness in the NBA is May and June. Who gives a rip about January in Cleveland? I want May and June success. I get it with Steph. Like Magic Johnson wasn't a great defender, but I got the payoff. He elevated everybody around him. Magic could play center. He could play guard. He could do anything. Embiid, to me, is a great productive talent, but he's closer to the Westbrook, Carmelo, where I get all this productivity. I'm lectured on how great he is. I'm not sure he elevates anybody. Like Carmelo, you had to kind of run the offense around him. He was kind of a rigid player, but he was an isolation player, a bit of a hole if you gave him the ball, and he couldn't defend. Well, again, there's limitations to how much I'm going to sacrifice in life. I got to get a payoff in the end. Right? So I'm watching this stuff. I'm watching Serbia, USA, Australia, USA. Embiid is not as dominant a player, as important a player, as complimentary a player as Anthony Davis. And I don't think it's relatively close. So, you know, I've said this, that I think Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, the rivalry is great. I don't need Caitlin Clark to win everything. It's a magic bird thing, back and forth. If Angel Reese wins Rookie of the Year, good for her. I like the back and forth. But I just want to tell you that Caitlin Clark last night had 19 assists in a game to set a league record. She's a rookie and a